Good afternoon, and welcome to TKAAM Thursdays, your midday cultural break. My name is Paris Cunningham, and I'm the curator here at the Kansas African American Museum, and I have with me today.
Dr. Lona Reeves, the Education and Community Outreach Director here at TKAAM.
And today we are going to have a candid conversation and give you some information about one of our favorite pieces, but especially our operations manager, Ms. Brooke Burrow, her favorite piece in our gallery called Bwoom. So, Dr. Reeves, if I can ask you, what exactly is Bwoom?
Bwoom is one of three masks from the Kuba kingdom, and it's one of the masks that's used in their ritual ceremonies that kind of explains their existence. And actually, I found today that it could be, in some cases, considered to be one of four masks. There's actually a fourth mask that's in the set, but the main three are Bwoom, who is the commoner, and then also, but he's also the brother of the king and queen, who are also sister and brother. And the king is Mawash Amaboy. I have a hard time with saying that correctly, so I'm sure we're going to have fun with that. And then the sister queen is Nagadi Mawash. And seems that apparently the whole thing about Bwoom too is that apparently he was one of the sister's suitors as well.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That is really interesting. So, can you pronounce for us? Because I've been saying Bwoom all this time, and that's spelled Bwoom.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you pronounce it?
I've been saying it Bwoom.
So
like
with
instead of
a
a W, no, I say B, but it's like, you know how you say broom, but instead of R, it's a W. So it's Bwoom, kind of like a bee womb, but boom.
Okay, I see. Okay. Awesome. So, what is the purpose of this mask? You said it's a part of a main three and possibly four kind of conjoined masks, if you will. So, what is Womb's purpose?
His purpose is he gives the state of the union address to the king and queen. He lets them know how the people are feeling, what life is like in the kingdom. And the really cool thing about this mask, I mean, if you got a sister and brother who are king and queen, things can get a little weird because they can be a little weird, right? But if the community is not a happy community and his report is not a happy report, the fellow who's wearing this mask does not have to be afraid of saying, shoot the messenger. If you're wearing that mask, it's protection so that when you take it off, you cannot have to have fear of harm or reprisal from the king and queen.
Okay, so essentially, Wavoom's purpose is to kind of be like the voice of the people or to voice concerns that the king or queen may not have knowledge of or may reject from others.
Exactly.
Okay. That's a really cool
You hit it on the head.
That is a really cool sentiment. So where does Bwoom come from and from what culture does it originate?
Okay, it comes from the Kuba people, and they are directly in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And actually, the difference between, like they said that Bwoom is a little bit different than the king and queen. While he is said to be a brother, he is also a commoner and not royalty. And at the same time, when this particular mask was made, and actually it was the first one of the trio to be made, it was made when I think it was the third king, Miko Mibu, back in 1810 to 1840 was when his rule was. And he was the third ruler after the kingdom was centralized. And it was made when this fellow was having some mental issues. And apparently, I don't know if because there's a lot of details about it. So I could conjecture that perhaps it was because his mental issues had him feeling like either royalty or common, and that this was made so that he could wear this mask and be a commoner, and supposedly it was supposed to help him cure his mental illness. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff going around on these 3 or 4 masks that just kind of, it gets a little cloudy, because then it also goes back to that the Cuba people also included the Twa people. And the
Mhm.
Twa people are more commonly known by the Europeanized name pygmy, which we don't use that name because it's
Right.
really a slur. And the Twa people are kind of like black people among black people in that they stand out because they look very different from the rest of the people. And they are considered to be kind of like the oldest
Mhm.
people of that area. And because they have been overpowered by some of the other communities, they have dwindled down to less than 100,000 people in the
Wow.
area. So it's kind of amazing that they
Wow.
still exist today, but they are among the oldest of the people. As a matter of fact, the St. Patrick's Day story really is about the Twa people.
Hmm.
Yeah, it
That's
kind of
really
blew me away
interesting.
when I was like, "What?" I mean, I knew that the St. Patrick's story was about some African people. I thought it was about the Moors specifically, but more specifically, it was about the Twa people. That
Wow.
the snakes that St. Patrick is said to have driven out of the Irish land
Mhm.
was really about the hats that the the Twa people wore. They had that snake on it that was known as the Uraeus, and
Mm.
that's the snake that they were really referring to. And it came about at a time when the Roman Catholics were um, wanting to go all Christian and get away from the Druid and Twa way of life.
That's a really interesting and fun fact. I'd never truly gotten a lot of information on the St. Patrick's Day story, and I don't think a
Mm,
lot of people know,
mm.
what the basis of St. Patrick's Day is. So it's really interesting to know that embedded in that story, whether for good or bad, there are African and African culture rooted in that.
About it is that one of the things that we talk about too is that when the Moors were in Ireland, they brought wisdom to the dark ages, so to speak. I mean, they were known, we call them even today the dark ages. And it was
Right.
at a time when Europe was deep into things like the bubonic plague and dying, and it was the African people who came there that helped them to figure out how to get out of that. So and
Yeah.
and then when you look back at, like I said, the Twa people, one of the things that you can see their difference between other people is they have very short stature. They're like
Mm.
dwarf size. And what do
Right.
you get in Ireland? You get the druids, and you get the dwarfs, and the what the leprechauns,
Yeah.
right? So
Exactly.
make them black, and you have Twa. Okay.
Hmm. The more you know. So what else can you tell us about this mask? Like, I know that you said that there is kind of in that set of masks that are worn in kind of like a court,
Mhm.
these masks were worn. What was that court like, or where did that court originate from? The king or the ruler having his mental illness and making creating this mask. After these were created, how were they used?
Well, they really come out a lot for they're about rituals and ceremonies, and the big time is when they have a new king, when they just like when you have the State of the Union address in the middle of the presidency,
Mm-hmm.
or especially at the beginning when you have a new president after or after the election, you have a State of the Union address, right? So it's pretty much the same kind of thing. You have a new king crowned, then Bwoom comes out and he gives a State of the Union address and lets the new king know what life is like, so they know what we're dealing with and what it is that we need to work on in the years coming up. And then like I guess you would say, we have another one 2 years later in the middle of the presidency, right? Say
Right,
how
right,
how you doing, and what you're going to be doing the next 2 years, right? So
right,
it's kind of
right.
the
Kind
same
of an
kind of
update.
thing.
Okay, that is really cool.
Hmm.
That is really, really cool. So, is there anything else specific that you can think of to tell us about Bavoom and to tell us about this mask?
Well, I think that one of the cool things about it that I always tell people when they come here for tours is that the way you have it set up in the museum, you can come around behind the mask and you can stand in as if you were wearing it, and you note that you would not look out of the eyes where you would expect to look out of a mask. You look actually through the nostrils. And, you know, looking at the mask, I would have thought that it would be a lot heavier than it looks a lot heavier than it actually is. But
Hmm.
because it's made out of wood, you know, I mean, you're an artist. What do you think about this mask and the different parts that come together to make it such an awesome piece? Because one thing that they really can't see is like the back of it, and I think the
Right.
back of it kind of tells the story of the people that it comes from, right?
Right. And it's always funny to me sitting here, I can see the back of the mask, and I've been able to look at it. And what's really cool I think about this mask specifically, compared to a lot of other masks that we see, most masks are headdresses either affixed on top of the head or over the face. And they're really very kind of flatter, or they're only made for one section of the face. But it's almost as if this mask here completely covers and encases a person's head and their face, and it even has ears on the sides of, of the mask,
Hmm.
which more so amplifies the idea that this mask is meant to be worn by the voice of the people, because it can actually hear and absorb and take in what's going on around it. But if you stand behind this mask, you can see that it's kind of shaped similar to a regular head. It's kind of has like a slope on the back, or what a lot of people know to be like a hook head. That's funny. But you can see the way that um, the people who made it, the people in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, how they saw themselves, and maybe more so like a caricaturized version of who or what they would look like at that time. So it has a very like large nose with large nostrils, and actually, as Dr. Reeves was saying, instead of looking through the eyes, you can see the eyes are slanted, or slits almost here. You would look through the nostrils of the mask. So the kind of large cranium and the part of the mask where most of the adornment is at the top would fit on top of your head, and you would see through the nostrils. So I think I didn't know that about the weight though. I didn't
Hmm.
know, to me, it looks very heavy. It looks like the weight of like three footballs,
It does. It
you
looks
know?
heavy.
Yes, but essentially what the mask is made of is tinted wood, metal that is affixed on top of that carved wood. There are glass beads made, as you can see, around the mouth, the nose, and the bridge of the nose, and in other places to create the shape and adornments around the mask. And then it's also made with cowrie shells. Of course, there's threading inside of that. And then there is animal fur and even some like animal skin within this mask that kind of affix together. And some of that wood is tinted and the metal is tinted to create that kind of rich, deep, dark brown, like coffee brown color.
Hmm.
And so obviously you can tell that like with most African art and African artifacts, the pieces are made as artwork,
Hmm.
but the artwork is meant to simulate the both culture and the tradition within it. So some of the colors in there might more so signify his job as opposed to being meant to display a sort of picture, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Hmm. And another note too is like you called it a hook head.
Yeah.
Some people call that the knowledge hump. You know, because I mean, it's where your brain is, where the brain is, and
Yes.
that seems to be an African thing too. You know, because I'm even seen stories that kind of wanted to make that an alien thing, that Africans with that shaped head did not come from this world. They came from outer space. They're aliens, and in reality, I mean, they're just as likely to have come here as you and I were, and we don't consider ourselves to be aliens, right? So.
Yeah, at all. But that's a really good. I didn't know that that was called the knowledge
Hmm.
hump. So essentially, you could look at it because the front of the head slopes
Hmm.
and the back of the head is very full. And I know just from my background, oddly enough, in learning about the mind and the brain, the front of our brain is often called our prefrontal cortex, and that's the area where we make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so once that area is formed, we it's formed by, our experiences, and then by, neural connections, we are able to make better decisions or more sound decisions. And so, that might not completely sure if that's a part of the culture, but with that symbolism there, it could notify or show
He
that,
makes some great decisions up
yeah,
there.
that he could make well-deformed,
Mm-hmm.
informed decisions. And
Mm-hmm. Yep. And seeing,
yeah.
like I said, in that knowledge part, that's one of the reasons why they called it that too, is because it's what they said, that these people brought all this knowledge to the rest of the world that they didn't know about. That things that, like, maybe that's how they really understood the wheel, or even had an idea about fire, because these quote unquote aliens came. And
Mhm.
we have, what is it, the Dogon people that we have represented here, they were able to see this star that was only discovered about 60 years ago in the rest of the world.
Wow.
And they knew it thousands of years. They knew it a long time about this star. What is it? The dog star, I think is what they call it. But
Oh wow.
pretty amazing.
That is really cool. So, just for context, do you have any more information or um, pieces of information about the culture in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the people there, and what might, how they might use this today?
Well, what I understand about it is that, like I said, the Twa were the people who were there more than likely first. But there are a lot of different kinds of people there in that area. And remember, I mentioned about that it was three kings before, when the kingdom was centralized, and kind of the way the economy worked in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in that area. I think they called it the Great Lakes area, because, like, what, Lake Victoria, Lake Tanganyika, Lake Nyasa are all right there in that area. And these different peoples would come together for trade, and they called the Twa people like a client um, group of the organization, that different people, like the Bashango. I think, if I'm saying that correctly, Bashango people were the ones who were the rulers, and who were making the decisions and making things happen. But the Twa were like a client in the organization, but they were a part of the culture as well. That they were not an outsider; they were within the community, but considered a client, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And that's what I figured, is that think that part of it, like, they became under the protection of the Bashango. That's one way of looking at it, because, like I said, other peoples were coming in and just kind of annihilating them. They were, like I said, most recently, the Rwanda thing is where a lot of Twa people were lost.
Right.
And, like I said, the fourth mask is actually kind of similar in name. It's the Pwoom I took, or I tuck, and that's spelled with a P instead of a B.
Hmm.
And that one represents a wise old man. And it said that sometimes it is used when they apprehend criminals. So I
Mm.
really was having a hard time with it. I just kind of found that one out, and didn't really wasn't able to find a lot to make the connection on how you go from a wise old man to catching criminals.
Right.
But okay,
Yeah.
interesting story. But like I said, there's so many myths surrounding what the story is, that until we get to actually sit down with someone from the Twa community or the Bashango community and just say, so tell us about your stories,
Right.
we're kind of giving it out third party.
Right. Okay. But that's an interesting sentiment, because in my mind, a wise old man would be kind of like a disciplinarian,
Hmm.
if you will. So that would make sense.
Okay.
And Bwoom, correct me if I'm wrong. Womb, the person who might wear that, or who might occupy that mask, is usually like a younger to like middle-aged male, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that's an interesting juxtaposition, the king queen, male female, and then a kind of younger,
Mm-hmm.
almost parliamentarian, and
Right.
then
And see, like I said, and there were the king and queen are sister and brother, and then Bwoom was like the third brother, but he was the third sibling, but he was the younger brother.
mm,
So, you know,
okay.
interesting. I'm like, okay, but it has a lot to do. The ritual has a lot to do with kind of explaining how the people came into being and what it was that they're meant, because they're a farming community. They're considered to be very creative. And what was it? I think that they were, well, I had a note here. Uh, the most, they had technology seemed to be a pretty big deal, but they were, oh my goodness, it's escaping me, Paris. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
The most artistic and highly technical people in the area were the
Oh,
Kuba people. So
okay.
So I'm like, and you can look at that piece right there, and there's a lot of art in that. And I'm not an artist. You are, so I know you know. If I think it, I know you know it better than I do. That's a very artistic piece. And then when you see
Yeah.
the other mask, they're quite elaborate.
Wow.
All three of the, because even the that third one, the plume I took, it's pretty elaborate as well. And then I was just looking around here. I didn't realize, but you realize that we have two Kuba helmet masks here. We
I
have a
did not.
the other one is right there in this case behind me. It's another one. It's a bit simpler, but it also is considered a helmet mask as well. So I'm like, and from the Kuba people. So I'm like, all
Wow.
right, get out of here. Who knew?
I did not know that.
But that's the cool thing about the Kansas African American Museum. We've been here for going on 3 years now, and still every day we find things that have been here too, but that we didn't realize was here because there's so much here.
Yeah.
There's so much here.
Yeah, and there's so much rich, so many pieces that have rich history and culture in them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Growing up here, I saw a lot of the pieces that are here in
Mm-hmm.
our collection, but I never really truly knew the story behind them or the significance within them. And every day, you learn something new about pieces that you've seen before. So my question for you is about Boom. What is your favorite thing about this piece, whether it be about the culture, the artistry, or just anything in general?
Well, I just think I'm just like the rest of us here. He is something special to look at. I mean, it's obvious it's a male mask. We know that it's a man that wears it, and when people come in, they're attracted to it as well. It's quite a piece. I really like the whole idea that this is the messenger, and he can tell the story, like you said, the voice of the people, and that when he dons this mask, he can tell it like it is, and not have a fear of tomorrow being his last day. So I
Yeah,
think that's pretty cool.
yeah. Well, that is a wonderful sentiment. I think it's beautiful that he is the messenger, and I
Mm-hmm.
also think it's amazing that considering this mask and when these helmet masks were created and in what way. I'm not completely exactly sure when this mask was created, but I know that they were created somewhere in I want to say the 19th to 20th century, either
Mm-hmm.
early 20th century or late to mid 19th century. And for a mask like this to withstand such time and to be so well preserved,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the pieces that we have from our African or from Africa to Kansas collection that if I look at it, I would think this thing could stand quite a bit longer, and it was made so well
Mm-hmm.
that it can hold so much more life and inform so many, more people without having to be, preserved in a certain way. And so I just think it's amazing at how it was crafted and with such care that it can last so long. A lot of pieces you look at them when they're older and they're kind of worn, they fall apart, you have to protect them from certain elements, but this mask has stood for a great deal of time, and I think
Hmm.
that that is so amazing.
Yes. So now you being an artist and looking at that, what can you tell us about the story about how it was created? You see all the different pieces involved. Like you said, it's got wood and metal and beads and animal fur. I mean, how did that all get put
Come
together? And do you have an idea
together.
how long it might take to put something like that together?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think I can answer a piece of that question. Um, if I am correct, and I could be wrong, so comment if you have any suggestions or more understanding, because that would be amazing to add
Yes,
to our wealth of knowledge.
we want to know.
Yes. But from my understanding, a majority of this helmet is made from wood, and I think, like you said, the mask itself, the headdress itself, isn't super heavy,
Hmm.
and so I'm sure it was made with a lightweight wood that's aerated so that it can let air pass through it. It's not as dense. And what I think that they did was they took that wood and carved it into quite a bit of the shape that is there. Like, if you come into the museum, you can see that there, like the holes within the nose there, you can see the wood, kind of
Hmm.
like the inner parts of the wood, and how those holes are carved out to see through. So the base of this mask is made of carved wood. And I believe that they took that wood, carved it into the shape that they wanted it to be, stained it. And then I think that they took, like, you can see there are perforations, and I think a lot of those perforations are within the metal in this mask.
Hmm.
And they affixed that to the top of it. So I'm not sure if they took heat and used that to bend it to shape around the mask. I would assume that that's what they did. And then from there, they kind of poked holes and into different places of the wood and the metals, and that's where they sewed those glass beads and the cowrie shells and the pieces of hair there along the top and bottom of this mask, so that the different ornaments and the even kind of like the I want to call it like a burlap or fabric
That
beard
chin
of
piece.
sorts. Yeah.
Yeah.
They took those pieces and kind of used that metal and that wood to anchor that there.
Hmm. Now, have you seen any of the rest of the attire that goes with these masks?
I haven't.
They are amazing. I mean, the cowrie shells and beading, all of that is all carried out within the rest of the attire that goes with the mask. And the king, the queen, and Bwoom were really quite awesome looking. I would love to see one of those ceremonies. It would have to be awesome opportunity.
Yes. Yes, I absolutely agree. Yes. So I'm not sure, I'm not quite too sure how much more time we have, but I do want to know if there is any information that you absolutely feel you must tell about womb and this wonderful piece and the culture that's held within this mask.
I think we pretty much covered it. I think, Lisa, is there something that I should have told that I didn't tell? Because you know about as much about these things as I do. Because I'm like I said, it's an amazing piece, and the whole idea that the voice of the people is in the Kansas African American Museum is really pretty awesome idea, and that you can come down here and check it out Monday through Saturday, or Tuesday through Friday from 10 to 5, and Saturdays from noon to 4.
Yes.
Love to have you.
Yes. No,
And
I think that you've covered a great deal of information, a lot more than I actually knew, especially with the information that there's a fourth mask. I'd only known about three.
mhm.
But I think you covered a great a great depth of information about this awesome mask, and I'm always just so amazed at the idea that we have such a precious piece in our collection, and it's one of my favorite pieces to tell people about when they come through. And the story is just such a grabber, and it's something that everybody can relate to, whether they have a voice that they speak for with others,
Mhm.
whether they depend on someone else to be their voice, or whether they are finding their own voice. I think that this piece just anchors that so well to so many different people so that they can relate to it and so that they'll want to dig more so into this culture and into the ceremony that accompanies this mask. So I think that, we've done a pretty good job.
We did it. All right.
All right. Well, thank you so, so, so much, Dr. Reeves, for sitting down with me today. This is new for me to be the interviewer as opposed to the interviewee. So I appreciate your grace and giving such amazing information today for our segment on TKAAM Thursdays.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share. It's one of my favorite things to do here.
Well, awesome. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for joining us. And we hope you enjoyed this segment, and see you in the next.